But Alan's been a student of the Course in Miracles since 1986. He's the author of Mystic in the Mews. If you don't know what Mews means, he'll explain that to you in a minute. It's an adventure novel, metaphysical, based on the teachings of A Course in Miracles. He is also the best-selling author of New York's 50 Best Places to Find Peace and Quiet in New York City. I can remember that book from years and years ago. It actually came in very, very handy. Have you updated that at all, or
6 times, but
6 times?
but guidebooks don't really work anymore because you can take that phone in your hand, put in
That's
places for peace and quiet in New York, and boom,
yeah,
takes a year for a book to come out once it's bought. Yeah.
yeah, of course. He's also currently working on the biography of A Course in Miracles master teacher Carol Howe, who's home. He happens to just be in at the moment. He's there in Denver, and he also hosts a YouTube show called Stories That Defy All Rational Explanation. And in the contact, you will find that a way to get a hold of Alan if you want to. And I think that's it. Alan, hi.
Hi, I'm glad to see you all. As John said, I'm in Denver. I live in New York City, and I'm in Denver right now because I'm working on the biography, Carol Howe's biography, which has been a tremendous experience, marinating in her love and healing presence for, well, I started in July. I've been out. This is my 6th time, but I told John I had a little show and tell before we started because for Course in Miracles students, this is a lot of fun. I think it is for me. But one day, I think it was in August, I was out here, and in the middle of my interview with Carol, she goes, "Oh, did I ever show you this?" And she walked me over to a bookcase that's just a little ways away here, and she shows me these books, and these are Bill Thetford's original texts. The 3 books, if you recall, originally they were hardcover, and they came in three books. And the reason the spines are so kind of blown out is because Bill had these when he moved to California. He had these on a bookshelf in Tiburon, I guess it was, or Sausalito, and they were in the sunshine. They were in a wind, and they got bleached out. So there's not much to them, but it was just fun to see them. And as I told John earlier, I held them, and it's like, oh, I'm holding the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is wonderful, and I
Are they,
realized it's only a physical book, but it's still fun.
are they by chance marked up? Do you have marginal copies or
I'm so
anything?
glad you asked me that because actually, well, I mean, first of all, people think the course was some people think it was in 76, but it's that book clearly says copyright 75. But in that, I mean, I think many people know that this is the 50th anniversary of the course. This is a big celebration year. And Carol one day opened these books when I was here, and there's a letter inside. I don't think you know this, John, but there was a letter inside, and it was Ken had asked a question of Jesus about the crucifixion and what it meant. And Helen downloaded this response to Ken, and it's in a letter. And
Oh,
Carol read it, and it's absolutely mind blowing. I said, "Has this ever been published?" She goes, "I think I talked about it in a webcast or something that she did years before, but she has promised to either publish that or, John, maybe you'll have the octogenarians on again and read it because it's only a minute and a half to read, but it's stunning. And I don't think that specific event has been addressed certainly not the way that he addresses it here. It's such
oh,
clarity. Yeah, it's
oh.
it's very special, and it was just tucked into Bill's book, so I think that was kind of neat.
So what's it on? It's on the resurrection?
So Ken wanted Jesus to explain the meaning of the crucifixion, and as I recall, Jesus also talks about the boulder in front of the cave being moved and what that symbolizes. It's not literal, but the whole thing is a metaphor, and so it's very powerful. I don't have it in front of me, but and of
I'm
course,
wondering if
go ahead and read it.
with Carol's permission, maybe we'd have that on Easter.
Oh, that'd be amazing. I'm sure she would
Oh,
absolutely love that. I mean, this is celebration year, and John and
oh,
I have been talking about it, and Carol's, got her hand raised for anything we want to do. So absolutely, I'll mention it to her. She's just over there, but I'll
okay.
mention it to her, and we'll discuss it. Of course, she would.
Why don't you begin, Alan, by telling us how you came to the course yourself?
Yeah, so in 1986 or so, I was a confused young man living in New York, working in advertising, feeling stressed and anxious.
Huh.
I'd been seeking since I was 18 years old, trying to figure out what this was all about. My father was Jewish, my mother was Catholic, and I was saying I was confused. I didn't know what was coming next or what all this talk was about God and spirit, and I went on a mission to try to figure out what this is all about. Why are we just all on this hamster wheel? And in 1986, so I was 30 years old, I was working in advertising, and a woman saw Diane Brooke Gusick at the New Life Expo. Remember that, John, at the Penn
Yeah,
Plaza?
sure.
And met her and said, we have to go hear this woman speak. And she was giving a class on the Course in Miracles in 86 at the Open Center in New York. And I went with these two colleagues from advertising. And I had the experience, you had to buy the books in order, and they came as three, just like Bill's. And I had the experience that many people have when they come to the course or find the blue books. I opened them up. I did not understand a word I was reading, but I knew finally this is where I'm going to land. And so, as Ken says, and you know this, he says, if you haven't thrown the blue books against the wall a couple of times a month, you haven't done it right.
All right.
And I certainly threw it against the wall. Mine are tattered back home, but I also yeah, I admittedly I would stop for 6 months at a time, not do the lessons, not work the course, got into trouble, got a mess in my mind, and then resumed. But I will say I've talked about this on Hakeem's podcast that I had. So I was studying for many, many years, decades. And a couple of years ago, I had a huge forgiveness opportunity that looked like a very dark 11 months, a dark night of the soul kind of experience. And it was only after then, I have a pretty good mind, intellect, but I'd never really understood the course. And let me say it differently. I never really felt the course the way that I am now. After that experience, they call it the dark night of the soul, the great unselfing, the ultimate unselfing. And I had that experience. And since then, it feels like the course is in my bones. It's in my daily practice. Ken would say that if you do nothing but be kind to everyone and everything you see in your day, and he always used to say, including your toaster, which is funny on the face of it, but if you think about it.
Whoa. Okay.
Go on.
Hi, yeah, and so so kindness has become
Gotta figure out how to turn. Hang on.
Oh, can you shut that off?
Come on.
Working on it.
no
Okay.
problem.
Listen to the recording. I'm trying to get to.
Go ahead.
Oh, now we got Alan off. You gotta get Alan back
I'm
on.
back.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so that so it's been a long adventure, more than any time in my life. I'm 68 years old. It feels like the course is just in my bones. I live for it. My book, I mean, I can talk about the novel at any point, John, but the novel was 10 years in the making. I wanted the novel. Carol and I had talked about this very early on, that there's a lot of didactic writings about the course. There's the Blue Book itself, obviously, and many, many brilliant writers, including John and Hakeem and many, many others have written. Carol, obviously, written about the course, the history of the course, their interpretations of the course. But this is one of the first. Steve Physiak, who's a lovely man, might even be on, wrote a historical novel that's based on course teachings. But this is, I think, the first book that really builds in course teachings, including course language, in an adventure story. And so the story is basically, and as John pointed out, it's MEWS, although many people think it's MUSC, which sort of works, but it's MEWS because this is a Mews, a carriage house alleyway that actually exists a few blocks from my house in New York City, and that's called an MEWS, a Mews. And the mystic in my book appears after 2,600 years in that Mews, And he appears in front of the protagonist of my book, whose name is Roger. And he's come after 2,600 years to this time and place to finish what he started back then. And what my protagonist doesn't know is that he agreed to reappear now and to complete their work. And the work that he has come to complete is the message of the Course. It's is to wake up the world, essentially, and to let people know that all is an illusion, and that we have to, in order to, I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity. I mean, in the book, the mystic says, "I'm here now because the pandemic was actually a wake-up call for the world, that it wasn't an accident. It was actually the silver lining is that people everywhere, and I've certainly experienced this in my life and with everybody I know, reevaluating just what is important, what is valuable, what's in my heart. It seems like everybody is reevaluating and recalibrating what they want to do with their lives. And then I think that the tumult that we seem to be experiencing now in the country and the world is also an expression of that moment, let's say, when we get to decide if we're going to change our minds and change our hearts. So the mystic and the muse, the mystic himself, you know, he could be Jesus, he could be Krishna, he could be Buddha, he could be you. I think it's interesting that Marianne's book, John, came out just this fall, the Mystic Jesus.
Right.
A mystic is simply somebody who's completely dedicated their lives to spirituality. John is a mystic, certainly. And he's an actual figure in history. His name is Empedocles, shortened to Cleese because Empedocles is a mouthful. And he was identified in your history books as a philosopher, lived around the same time as Plato. But he says, oh, philosophy, boof. Who wants to be a philosopher? That's what they call you when they're too afraid of your ideas. So he then shares what he knows to be the truth, but it comes through the book. The Course messages come through the book as an adventure tale. And so Roger, who is the protagonist, young 32-year-old guy, has a friend named Verily, and they start to take a journey with the mystic, with Empedocles. I want to say something because I share this on Hakim's podcast, and to me it's so fun. All of the names and all of the characters in the book were sent to me. The names and their reasons were given to me. That would be a podcast in itself, the way the book unfolded after I had the awakening, recalibration, the dark night experience. And it was sort of just channeled through. But then the name Verily, I like particularly because she's the big cynic in the book. She doesn't believe. You gotta show me, John, because if you don't show me, you don't really prove it, I'm not coming along for the ride. And that name came to me, and then you know, I tell this story because I love it, which is that the song that we have sung since we're children, really young, 4 or 5. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. There are versions, it was written in the 1850s, but there are versions of that book, of that lyric. And I think it might have been the early lyric. I'm still trying to nail that down, where it was row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Verily, 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 life is but a dream. And of course, veritas is truth, and it's basically truly, 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 life is but an illusion. And we sing that since we're kids, you know, and the truth of that leaves us. And then hopefully, if we're on a quest, returns to us. In the book, her name, because it's a lot to say verily, verily all the time, was changed to V, or it's V as well. Although the mystic always calls her throughout the book Miss Verily. But but the V, of course, is peace. We do that. That's peace, and also victory. And I feel it's victory over the ego thought system. So the book is basically, you know, I don't know that I thought this consciously as I was thinking about it, but all the great epic stories of awakening have the same sort of template, and so do Helen and Bill's. The story begins. That was, I called in the ancestors and the
That
aliens.
was it, yeah.
That was it. They came in on cue.
Ooh,
So,
like,
the story of Helen and Bill is Bill turns to Helen in a crisis. They were going through hell and says there has to be another way. And then the guide appears. This is the template for all the great epic allegories and parables. But then the guide comes in, and that is Jesus, the mystic. And then they gather the mighty companions so that they can go on the journey. Ken, Judy, Jon Mundy, and they start to walk the process of the journey, the hero's journey, which Joseph Campbell, of course, made very famous. And it always has the same sort of characteristics. So the journey begins, and there are trials, and of course they had tremendous trials. Helen had a lot of resistance, and Bill was reluctant because of his credentials and everything. But the mighty companions help along the way. So Ken obviously helped with the editing, and Judy with the publication. And then the end of the hero's journey always is that you receive the gold, which is, in the case of the Course in Miracles, the awakening and the love muscle getting very strong. And that has to be disseminated to the community. That's the only way the story ever ends well. And the dissemination would be the blue books. And then the community grows, and we get to share the love and the vibration, the high vibration. Now, that story is repeated perfectly in The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy is fed up with Kansas. She wants to go over the rainbow where the bluebirds fly. And then the crisis happens, the tornado. And she has the guide. Glenda shows up immediately as soon as she lands over the rainbow, which is another dream. Obviously, we know that at the end. So she's just having a dream. And then she has her mighty companions who walk the yellow brick road with her. And that would be obviously the Scarecrow, the Lion, the Tin Man. And then they find the false, Mecca, the false heaven, the Wizard of the Oz. And then the wizard turns out to be a false prophet. The whole thing. And there's usually, by the way, in that story, an animal or some sort of companion, obviously Toto. The same story. And then let me just finish about Dorothy. She finds out from her mystic, Glenda, that all she ever had to do, she always had the way home. All you do is click these heels and you're home. Didn't have to go through all that hell after all. And that, of course, is the story of the Course. But it comes true in Star Wars. And John and I were talking about this the other day, because I know I received the message after I came through my challenge, that my job was to make this more fun. I have never understood why a spiritual path of any kind is so serious and unfun. And the book is definitely fun. And, one of the things I realize is that children of all ages, me included, are sort of obsessed with Star Wars. But Star Wars is also this story. The Force, let the Force be with you. What are we talking about?
right.
Talking about spirit. And George Lucas totally built the Star Wars trilogy series on that. But, it's same thing. Luke Skywalker is fed up with Tatooine and its two sons. And he wants adventure. He wants excitement. He wants to find out what else is around other than Tatooine. And there's a crisis, and he finds the guide, who's Obi-Wan. And then they go on the adventure, and they find their mighty companions, Han Solo and the Wookiee and Princess Leia. And then that journey begins. And what is the end of that story? Mastery through becoming a Jedi Knight. But children of all ages love that story. But it is the story. It's Jesus' story. It's that journey. Anyway, I could go on. Dances with Wolves is exactly the same story. If you break it down and take a look, and all the great stories are that. So that's mine. But I'll shut up in a second, John, anytime you want. But what I will say is that the mantra of the book is that the mystic says, in order to wake up, you need to pay attention, stay alert, and be aware. 4 signs, 4 synchronicities, 4 coincidences. That is what's going to unravel. You use your senses to get out of the sensory ego world, the illusion. And so I call it a treasure hunt in the book because this can make our journeys really fun. The idea of praying, listening, and following is very nice. I mean, it certainly works, but a lot of people are concerned about or thinking about what is this prayer we're talking about? How is it done? I love that expression. Prayer is the way we speak to God or spirit, and intuition is the way God speaks back. But I like to say, and signs and synchronicities and coincidences are the way that we get our messages. That's what makes it a treasure hunt. And I don't care how old you are, whether you're 90 or you're 9, there's no one who doesn't want to go on a treasure hunt. And it can be that much fun. I mean, I'm sitting in Carol Howe's house, who wrote the book Never Forget the Laugh, which is the story of Bill Thetford. And he gave her that title when she had finished writing his biography. He, on the other side, wherever he is, gave her that title. And the bottom line is you got to laugh. The whole thing is a cartoon. It's silly. And that's what the intent here is, to make the journey fun and adventure. It's I hope it will be a trilogy. So there's 2 books to come. It took me 10 years to write this one. I'm 68. I'll be 90 when I finish the other 2. But I think I have an idea what they're going to say coming up. But the idea is that this can be a fun experience, and it's bizarre to me. John, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're more of this biblical scholar than I am, but I believe nowhere in the Bible does it say that Jesus laughed or smiled. Now, that is not possible for an awakened being. It's just not possible, because the whole thing is just it's just a learning opportunity. It's just a place where we're going to learn to unlearn. So so there's a lot of fun. I hope there's humor in the book, and it ends up with a cliffhanger, and we know where we're going to be headed next. I could say more, but I'll leave it there for now.
Well, you're doing good. Alice in Wonderland's another really good example of a book of the same. And it's interesting because they're all dreams.
Yes.
And there's an awakening process that has to occur to get out of the dream and not to take the dream, the illusion as reality, even though it's a really weird dream. I mean, would you agree that our world right now seems to be a little strange? I mean, a lot of people are feeling that all over the place, right?
Yes.
And I think it's probably because there is something kind of coming into the head, something coming up, and that's what happens is you ever wake up in the morning and you know that you were just having a strange dream, but you got to try to put the pieces back together again, or maybe you can and maybe you can't, or what was the message in any event in that dream. Another book that I talk about a lot in my class just recently is Pilgrim's Progress by Jon Bunyan. That whole thing is a dream as well. And he goes through all these adventures. And what's interesting to me is that in using the principle of the atonement, each of the adventures that Christian goes through, as he goes through the adventures, he loses a part of the burden he was carrying with him. So he goes through the slough of despondency, the valley of humiliation. Ever been to any of these places? And when, no, not you. No, of course not you. But when they happen, that's the kind of cleansing that then occurs. And what is the atonement process? The atonement is letting go of all the crap, all the guilt, all the stuff that we've picked up along the way on the behalf of the ego. And now we found out we got to let it go.
Yeah.
All right. And so Christian in Pilgrim's Progress winds up at the kingdom of heaven at a door naked. So, psychologically, I mean, there's nothing you can take in, right? So the whole thing, and that's true in the Course too. Whether people are kind of, you got to let go everything, your name, the body. You're not a body. But all the accoutrements, a doctor, or whatever, all that stuff that we think that we are, that we gather along the way, now must be left outside. If you want to add to that, but it's the same kind of an idea.
Yeah, well, I think, when I said that my father was Jewish and my mother was Catholic and I was confused, as a child, I was very upset. I grew up in a Jewish community, sort of. So I identified more with that as a child. But sorry about that. Yeah, I realized as a child I thought I've been cheated. I don't have a real
Oh.
Christmas tree. We don't have a real Hanukkah bush. I always felt like I was missing out on something. And then as in my 20s, when my own quest began for understanding and for meaning, I realized that was sort of an advantage because I didn't have to unlearn a lot of stuff to start to build
Oh,
on
yeah.
my own understanding. I didn't, I know that so many people obviously have, this well, John, have so much
Yeah.
resistance to the language of the course, which is written in Christian terminology,
Sure.
and there's a he instead of a female pronoun. And so that becomes an obstacle. And some people, for some, it's too much of an obstacle. I had a therapist who was actually referred to me by Ken Wapnick, and a wonderful, amazing woman, but a conservative Jew, and she couldn't come to the course. It was something that I had to sort of keep not private as much as just sort of quiet about because it offended her, and that's a shame because I know that Ken would have loved to have his good friend there, but
Yeah.
but it's understandable. So at least I didn't have maybe decades to just figure out that, Nietzsche said a great line. There was only one Christian and he died on the cross. It was for him. The whole thing was for him. And then
Yeah,
after that, we all have access to the same spiritual guidance for us. If there's 7.5 billion people on the planet, there are 7.5 billion directions or paths or plans. And that's about asking and listening and following. And so I love that. And that's really driven home in the novel is that, don't follow anybody. There's only one energy or message to follow. And you're not probably going to find it in the headlines of your newspaper, the opposite. So I do hear what you're saying. And now I feel very grateful for what I thought was sort of a chaotic upbringing. I just realized everything was perfectly planned, and
Sure.
and meeting Diane, who is obviously she's also one of our master teachers, and having her be the first.
Right.
And then she said, no, Allan, if you're serious about this, you got to go up to Roscoe. And that was in 89 or 90. And then I started going up and seeing Ken, and he became, a friend. And is there anybody who was with Ken that doesn't think he was your friend? I think he was my friend. He certainly gave good hugs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So
Well, so you said there's going to be more? You
yeah.
think?
So
How did that go? Do you know? Have you playing with that idea in your mind?
Yeah, actually, I do. As I said, I told Tam Morgan about the book. Of course, she knows of it. Tam is the publisher, FIP president. And I told her that, boy, that was a slog, that 10 years. Although I will say the last 6 months, it felt like I would just put my finger on the fingers on the keyboards, and something would be happening. And I literally would type a word and hear not that word. And very precise about my language. I hope the book reflects. I would try to find the right words because, as Ken would say, words are two symbols away from reality. But if you're going to write in words, I want them to be precise. And so I do feel. Tam said to me, well. I said, it took 10 years for that one. I really like these next two in a classic trilogy sort of context to be done more quickly. And I've been told that it's going to be about 2.5 years for each one. But she said, close your eyes and type. And I thought, no, that's a really good idea. So I have been closing my eyes and typing, and I'm typing more quickly and better and more accurate. So I'll just keep going with this idea. It's been really fascinating to me. How many words you type really doesn't matter. It's what words you're typing, of course. But I'm having an experience that feels like a deepening of a receiving the languages and the message and the story. Roger. Okay, so the main protagonist is named Roger. There's a reason he's named Roger.
Okay.
because every time the mystic says, you get that, he is supposed to say, Roger, Roger,
Huh.
Roger.
Oh,
But of course, that's just his name. But it's significant to me because
oh,
most of us, certainly Allan Ishac, is going to resist and resist and resist until I go, all right, I get it. Roger, Roger, Jesus, I get it. So
yeah.
every character in the book has a name that for me is significant. You know, there's a Ken Wapnick character. There's a librarian named Peter Howe because of her, you know. So every
Oh,
character is in there for a reason that is meaningful in relation, is relevant to course students. And you'll hear language that's like right out of the course book. I mean, the mystic speaks course lines actually. So yeah. So the next two are just the continuation of what is usually the path, which is you have a moment of awakening where you are like, whoa, what was that? And that's my character has that moment, finds the guide. And then there's the challenge or the the crisis, the wow, we've got to go on. This journey is no joke. You know, Carol likes to say the Course in Miracles is not for sissies. I was called a sissy as a kid, so I changed it to Course in Miracles is not for the faint of heart. But this is a real deal. If what will not what did Sappho said? What is not said will get wept. And so you got to bring it all up. I don't know, John. I had just discovered something that just in the writing of my book in the last couple of years that I did not know. And it's related to the Pandora's box allegory. Everybody knows what the Pandora's box is. Don't open it up. It's filled with bats. It's filled with darkness. It's filled with evil. It's filled with hate. Keep it closed. Don't open Pandora's box. I finally read the whole allegory. And
oh,
yet, all of that comes up. All of that comes out of not actually a box, it was an urn. And at the end of that process of bringing all that darkness to the surface, to the light, at the bottom of the urn is hope. I did not know that. I mean, that is to me a miraculous thing. And that should, every therapist should know that this process of bringing the course is clear about this. You've got to bring your ugliest stuff to spirit. You have
right.
and if you don't do that, there's no hope. There's no hope. And that's why you got to dig through it all and bring it all up. And as Ken said, no one wants this course. He used to say, no one wants this course. It's
Nobody
going to
wants.
challenge you at your core. You're going to feel like you're going to die, or at least that was my experience. So the point being, all of that I hope is in here, and
Yeah.
it's it's a 300-page book, but there's more to tell. And so I know the titles already. You asked me, do I know where
Oh,
I know where it's going. I was given the titles. I like them very
tell us
much.
the title. Tell us the title.
I'll tell you one. So it's always the mystic and or something like that. So
Okay.
this one is the mystic and the plenum miraculum. It's Latin for the full miracle. The mystic and the plenum miraculum. My titles make people work a little, and I'm fine with that. So that's the next one.
In all the hero stories too, there's an opponent. There's is the authority. But if you think about Jesus, the historical Jesus life, and I talk about this quite a bit actually, it's prefaced for the order of events are he's baptized by John the Baptist in the River Jordan. The next line in the Bible says, after that he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness for a time of testing. And then we go and then we've got the devil. Now, there's no real devil, but the devil obviously is the ego, right? And then the ego puts him through all you could be powerful. You could do all these things. People would bow down and worship you, all this kind of, and then there's this, it's the same process that we all go through, but the resistance to the temptation, you don't give in to the ego, you don't get caught in Pandora's box. You find a way out. And the way out is, and this is why a lot of people don't go for the course, but it's the way out. You got to recognize that you're the Christ.
Yeah.
You're the Christ. Oh my God. I mean, that's a heavy duty. Really? I mean, to get back to that, then think of everything I've got to all of my illusions. I got to let go of all my illusions
Yeah.
in order to get to that stage. and is anybody willing to do that? Which really means, again, you got to wake, you got to open the eyes and awaken from the dream.
Yeah, I want to say, because I mentioned this experience I had, which was 11 months, and it was hell. I mean, I really thought
Yeah.
it's time to exit stage left. But I will say that, I know now that it was this brutal blessing, but going through that was that idea of the final unselfing. It sounds like it could be, oh, I've arrived. It's the beginning. It's not the end. The unselfing piece is the piece when you're able to say, I hope, take me. I know nothing. I am completely clueless. Now take me. It's the beginning of the story. It's like we're in the workbook lesson, epilogue. It says this is not the end. This is just the start. People read. Ken used to say this all the time. People would go, "Oh, I did the course," meaning they went to hear the workbook lessons. You just started,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And he also used to say that not until you're in your 40s or 50s is it a good time to start the course, because you have to try all of the ego tricks first. That Lamborghini, I know it's going to be the Lamborghini, or if I'm that really beautiful blonde.
Yeah, right.
You've got to try all and he also said, and I think this is beautiful, you don't see a lot of really young people involved in the course, because he would say that get out of their way, let them try everything, let them believe that that's gonna bring them peace and happiness and calm, and then eventually they come to you and say, nothing's worked. I'm at the bottom of the pits here. Nothing has worked. That's Bill's. There's got to be another way, and this is the way for me, and this is the way for me. I mean, that this is my attempt to make my adventure meaningful to some extent. I mean, I knew this is a little weird to say, but one eye opened when I was 18. I had a existential crisis after my first year of college, which woke, one eye opened. I knew that something else was going on, and that began the whole journey that I had. But the second eye didn't open until I spent really what Judy Scutch used to say, that she was she was the president of the Slow Learners Club when it came to the course. When she died a few years ago, I said, I'm running for president. I mean, I would try to do everything and she said, I took 1,000 detours. I've taken 10,000 detours. And now after I had a good life, I mean, I had a career and all that, but now something else has happened, and it's beautiful. I mean, just being in Carol's house and working on her life story is such a profound privilege, because there's no way to be in this presence and not feel the history, John, that you lived. I mean, it's spectacular. So yeah, I could say more, but I'm very pleased that I had that. I was going to call it a crash, but that is so not right. That I had that intervention, and that I'm here now. So yeah, those next two books, so I hopeful will come pouring out, and
they will
be real soon.
Well, you already opened the spigot, so the flow should continue to work. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah.
It's partly Judy's, although I was introduced to the course about a month before Judy, but it was her enthusiasm that got me to go in deeper into it.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, when I saw that she took fire with it, I thought, well, I mean, I was still like, what does this mean? Even though I was having sessions with Ken and stuff.
Yeah.
But still, it took a while to click. It does, because this is and that's why traditional Christianity, one of the reasons that traditional Christianity, it's just so different.
Yeah.
The process is so different, and there's going to be a lot of waking up that has to be done. It takes a long time for us to really change our minds if we're kind of stuck in one position. But maybe unhappy with that position. until something happens that, well, in my instance, Mike, I had to get out of the church before I could really begin to blossom, you know? Yeah. But you believe it or not, we're 50 minutes into this, and usually what I do at this point is we begin to think about the possibility. Bud comes and tells us what's been going on in chat, and then after that, we'll begin to have dialoguing with whoever's here who would like to ask you questions. Okay,
Sure.
Bud.
You know, I would like to make a couple of comments on a few things that you said. We don't have any questions in chat right now. I know that Hakeem wants to say something, but I'd like to talk about two things that really struck me. I've been teaching this as a course teacher for a very, very long time, Alan, and that is about row, row, row your boat. So when you look at it as a metaphor, it's row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, right? But notice that in between all of the work is merrily, 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 merrily.
Mm.
Life is but a dream. And so when we really, and I like verily as well, I think that's very powerful, verily powerful. But it's that notion of how much work are we doing versus how much are we having fun?
Yeah.
That's an important concept.
Mm.
And Jesus doesn't laugh in the canonical books, but he certainly does in the Apocrypha. So
Okay.
once you go back to the Gnostic texts, he
Mm.
does laugh.
Okay.
You know, God laughs in derision in Psalms. You know, he which is obviously an egoic interpretation of God's perspective, but that's a whole nother story.
Mm.
But yeah, he does laugh, and like you said, it's an impossibility for an awakened person not to be laughing.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, yeah.
just, I mean, it's all so
Exactly.
silly. We
Yeah.
take it so seriously.
Yeah.
So
If I
there's
don't
definitely that.
my telling a story, I was, I worked some with Dr. Salvador Roquette in Mexico. And the third time that I went down, we went to see Maria Sabina, sorceress, and we spent an all-night journey in her hut in the cornfields with magic mushrooms. And I laughed all night long. I couldn't stop it. I started rolling around on the floor, holding my sides, laughing because it had given me this sort of insight into the absurdity of everything. And well, anyhow, that's what happened. That was at the end. I mean, that was the last time I saw him. I was 3 times there, but that was the last time. And strangely enough, there was a guy there he was a German named Manfred, and he had a hard night, and he kept moaning and groaning through the whole experience, and I kept saying, "Come on, Manfred, come on, Manfred." And the next day, some of the other participants chided me for saying those things to Manfred, but Manfred says, "I understood exactly what he was doing." It was like, "Give birth to this thing, man," and it's like he was trying to get it. He couldn't give, but he finally did. Anyhow, that's just
You
an
know,
aside.
I have only done psychedelics 3 times, but I did do one 5 years ago. It was psilocybin, and I didn't want to at all. I was really frightened, and
Ah,
my partner at the time really wanted to do it. So I just didn't want to do it, but it was very well done with there were like 12 people and like 5 facilitators. So it was in a beautiful home. So I felt, okay, let me give this a try. And my partner really wanted to do it. She had one of those experiences which was terrifying for her. Like
oh yeah.
what the one who was really frightened, I had an amazing experience where at one, maybe, I don't know, it went on for 5 hours. So at some point I sat up and I felt like a mountain. I felt like I'm the
Mm.
mountain. And it
Yeah.
just changed everything about
Yes.
my
Yeah.
perception of the world, my life, me. But I got a set of words that came to me just boom, like really words in my ears. And I knew immediately, now this is 5 years ago, I knew immediately those were the last words of my novel. And I
Oh,
I was only like a halfway through it. it ended up being, they are, except that I wrote sort of an epilogue, but it gave me a place to aim to, John, in terms of being, receiving a message. And those words are really powerful to me. I think maybe the best words in the book. And they came to
Are
me.
you going to tell us what the words are? Or are we going to be left in
No,
suspense?
you have to buy the book.
Thank you, Bud. I was actually about to say them. Oh my. Yes, you have to buy the book. I'm such a lousy salesman. John, get out of the picture, Bud.
The only way you're going to find out, right?
Right. Yeah. I can tell you the page, but I won't tell you.
Actually, I got the book laying right over
And the link to the book is in chat.
Thank you.
here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the Mystic and the Muse. I don't know if that's the right link, but I'm sure it is. Anyway, yeah. So it was cool because I don't really advocate that. I'm not somebody
no, neither do I.
but I had one of those moments where I realized I am not this body. I am free. I am under no law but God's. I'm a mountain. Why would I even think about, whatever migraine I have or whatever? It was cool, but it was really cool was I jumped up from it. I mean, I'm still in the psychedelic mode, and I jumped up and I asked one of the facilitators, bring a piece of paper immediately. And I went down and stuck it to my forehead, and it appeared just seamlessly in the context and the flow of the book. I mean, it was really, can I just say one more thing, John? This is why so in March I'm launching this YouTube channel show called Stories That Defy All Rational Explanation. Now that could sound sensationalist or whatever. In terms of the course, I've had crazy experiences in the last few years that defy all rational explanation. They're impossible within the context of what we think we know. And those stories, so then I started, that set of words, stories that defy all rational explanation, seem to light people up. And the stories that have been shared with me, if you hear them, first of all, they're so much fun to hear. They're amazing. Everybody's jaw drops, but that you're not alone, that there's more happening. You can't listen to these stories and go, I mean, you listen and you think, wow, I have to reconsider everything. Ken would talk about, and I think it's in the course, that reality is 180 degrees from what we think we know. 180 degrees. That means the opposite.
The opposite, yeah.
I mean, it blows you away. It was like, wait, nothing I think I know is true. And so these stories let you know that, that basically I do a few minutes at the beginning of the story, then I have the person on who's experienced it, and then I close out to just explain how that relates to the course and to this path that I've been on, but that we're all on here. And it's just a lot of fun. I mean, it's just great fun. So I'm inviting anybody who's listening now to, I think Bud has my email address, just send them along, and I'm gonna do one a week. Yeah, I've already got 8 that are blowing my mind. Right. So I can't wait. And so that's gonna happen as well. And it's
where are you posting these?
So it'll be a YouTube channel, Bud. It's called.
Okay, so it's not up yet, right?
Yeah, it's not up yet. In March. It's called Stories That Defy All Rational Explanation.
Right, I see that. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll repost Allan's contact information.
Janet does have a couple of questions, and Janet, you want to come on and ask those questions, or?
Well, so I'll go ahead and share what she asked, and that is, Allan, do you follow a daily spiritual practice that you could share with us?
Well, I sure do. I mean, I've done the workbook lessons probably a dozen times. The last 3 years, I've been doing them regularly. I actually listen to Carol Howe's workbook lesson explanation every day. But I take about an hour to an hour and a half every morning to, let me tell you this. I mean, this may be, I mean, Ken would tell a funny story, which is that, people that have passed over, our ancestors, they're not necessarily more evolved than we are now. They just don't have a physical body. So they probably have some awareness that the body isn't everything. But I have 18 entities, spirits, guides in my circle every morning. And I speak to each one of them individually. It's a circle I see who's in it. I know these people, they are my ancestors. And they help me. And whatever is going on, they're helpful. the Holy Spirit is in my circle. Jesus is the mystic here who speaks to me. He was a real character in history. Empedocles existed, and he is so delighted that his story gets to be told. So he's in my circle. I have that day that I had that psychedelic experience, one of the facilitators said, when you were sitting up like that, there was a giant blue angel over your head, giant, like 10 feet tall. So I said, well, okay, I don't know. Why
Yeah.
not? So the blue angel's in my circle. Bill Thetford's in my circle. Ken is in my circle. Renee Saltoun, John, who I think you knew from long ago, wonderful woman, an Iraqi woman, as my dad was, who was one of the first people who mentioned the course to me in the 70s, late 70s, but I didn't pick up on it until 86. So to answer the question, I always spend between 15 and 20 minutes, or 15 minutes and a half hour, just if I have something going on, asking for my ancestors to be with me, to guide me, to show me what I need to see. May not be the highest form of spiritual guidance, but it's powerful for me. There's a wonderful scene in a movie called Amistad where the character, the slave who's hoping to be free, is speaking to John Adams, who's defending him, and he says, we won't be alone in the courtroom. John Adams says, and the slave, I'm spacing on his names. Anyway, let's call him Cece. He says, oh, we won't be alone. Yeah, I won't be alone. And he says, yes, we'll have these lawyers. And he said, no. I will, and he says, essentially, I'll sort of paraphrase, he says, I will reach back to the beginning of time and call on my ancestors to be with me and help me through these days of judgment, through this chaos, through this confusion, through this fear. And they will come. They must come, for in this moment, I am the only reason they have ever existed at all. I find that very beautiful. You can find it. It's 2 minutes. Amistad, just put call to the ancestors. I think that's actually what the scene is called, call to the ancestors. So I call to my ancestors, and that last piece, I am the only reason, we could say we are the only reason they have ever existed at all. The way I use that in my meditation is say, all of their love, all of the Dumichels and Ishacs and thousands more generations, they went through what they went through so that I could feel their love and communicate that into the world. It's very powerful for me.
Yeah.
So that's something I do every day. And of course, my course reading and these kinds of things. But if I don't start my day with that practice, I don't have as good a day. And I really haven't missed now in several years. It's important to me. I hope it doesn't become too ritualized. Ken would say there's no spiritual way to sit. There's no spiritual food to eat. There's no spiritual clothes to wear. There are no spiritual rituals to do. And we can get really caught up in the rituals and then forget what the whole point was,
I see that that's so true in traditional Christianity, especially the higher dimensions of it that's trapped in ritual.
Yeah.
There's actually a line in the course about that, seek out for your meaning and ritual.
Yeah.
So, Hakeem wanted to come on? Share.
Hakeem,
Hey, Hakeem.
Hey,
my brother.
it's been so interesting to listen to both of you, and especially so powerful when you talk about your circle of 18. I know you call them that. But I wanted to say, when you do a creative expression, such as your latest book, the spiritual book, right? Because you've written other books too. I know it's not just, putting out a book. In many ways, it's going against guilt, right? And you had your dark night of the soul. I know you had your challenges with depression too. So for me, when you talk about your book, it's not, somebody wrote a book. I see it as a kind of, that it's symbolized with a certain going against guilt, with a certain forgiveness, with a certain coming to your destiny. So my question to you, Allan, beautiful Allan, I might say, because I just love listening to you, is now when this book is out, do you feel a certain kind of you honored what spirits want you to do. What is your experience now that you have stayed on course, this courageous path of listening to spirit, going against guilt, and putting the work in? Because this book took you 10 years. That is not a small thing. What is your experience of, coming full circle? And in a way, as I see you here with Jon, it's a form of celebration, And it's sort of like, when Bill died, there were fireworks in the sky.
That's
So
true.
there's a celebration of a person's life and a person's work. What is your experience of, honoring that right-minded impulse, if you catch me? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things I think, so early on, I mentioned this, I don't think I finished the thought when I was talking to Carol about writing the novel. She said, this is very important. She thought, because if I was true to the message of the course in the writing of the novel, that there are many, many people, many more people would not come to the course than would come to the course because of the way it's written. And it's not easy reading at all, the blue book, particularly with all the resistance we all have built in. So writing it as a story and as a novel and an adventure feels to me like my contribution. Hakeem, you and I have talked a lot about this, about the fun aspects. I mean, how did any path become where, George Lucas did the Star Wars thing, which is so creative and so beautiful. Where did that inspiration come from? The Force, that's where it came from. And it's so much fun, right? I mean, and anything creatively. I mean, I was a creative director in an ad agency. You'd have between 9 and 5 to come up with an idea. And I was always terrified. It's like, no, I drained my cup with the last thing I did. How's anything new going to come? And that's when you turn over, God, the spirit part of us is infinite. I mean, it's got infinite fun planned, much better than I could ever think. Most of us, don't we say, my life is good enough. I have reasonable health. I have reasonable situation financially. And then we settle for what is so much less than what's possible when we really listen and follow. And so I think the answer to your question is that one of the things that's kind of cool to me is that the book was supposed to come out in 2022. Jon and I have the same wonderful agent, Ivor Whitson. It was supposed to come out then, and then I went into my experience that I had. And when I came out of it, I realized my novel's not done. I mean, everything that I experienced during that period, 11-month period, needed to be incorporated in the book. And that's when I got the help to incorporate those things in the book. So I think it's kind of fun that it came out last summer, and here's the 25th anniversary the 50th anniversary of the course, and then as a result probably of the book coming out. And Carol asked me to write a biography about 4 years ago, and I said I can't do it. This has got to be the thing I need to do. This is in my bones. If this doesn't happen, I have failed myself and probably spirit. And when it was done, it came out in June. In July, she said, "Do you still want to do my biography?" And I said, "You're in great shape and you write well. Why don't you do it as an autobiography?" She said, I could never write about myself. So that has happened, and that isn't. Now I have these things kind of paralleling the biography and the novel, and it all just feels so perfectly planned. People will say, well, that seems like a lot of work. It doesn't somehow. It feels like, oh no, this is going to happen. This is going to be easy. This is what I came for. All my energy goes there. I suddenly started sleeping like a lot less. I don't think it's a good idea to tell people. It just happened. Don't you? I used to think, Jon, that Ken probably slept a couple hours a night. I don't know how he could have created what he created. The volume of
Well, to tell you that Ken slept from 10 to 4.
Ken slept from 10 to 4. No, I never.
Well, that's 6 hours.
Oh, okay.
He was up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We're working. He'd have a day's worth of work done before the rest of us got out of bed.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of fun because I'm noticing I've got a 6-hour thing now, and I'm wide awake, and I don't feel any fatigue at all. And I'm 68. My friend from high school is on this call, Donna, and we went to the reunion. I tell you, it was fascinating for me because I'm 68, obviously, 50th high school reunion. And there was a lot of winding down that I heard about amongst my classmates. Let's you got your retirement house or whatever,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
perfectly fine. But I never use the word retire because the word tired is in that
Me
word.
either.
I don't want to have anything to do with that because I just feel like I know it sounds crazy. My life just started, I mean, a couple of years ago was the first time I felt fully me,
Yeah,
authentically.
yeah,
I know who I am now. Oh,
yeah.
oh, I should have had a V8, I mean, it's like, now I get it. So I'm pretty juiced. Yeah.
Sometimes people will say to me, when you're going to retire? And I say, oh, I'm having too much fun.
Yeah.
How
Well,
can I
that's
retire? Oh, I don't play golf, you know.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you, Hakeem. Always great to see you, man. Beautiful.
yeah. There is a thing I do notice with older folks. There's this tendency to sit in front of the TV and to kind of let go of this is an exciting time. You could be really awake at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
take advantage of what you've learned, especially about how to deal with other people in the course of this world.
Yeah.
And all those, the course is really, it's an adventure in ideas. So, I mean, it's really waking up the mind. So as the mind awakens, why wouldn't I use my being awake in a constructive, creative way? That's what, we're here for. Well, I mean, we're here to love. That's how do you express your love? You're doing it with writing, but it's in our relationships as well. And
Yeah.
everything, get excited about every human being you meet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wonderful. Huh?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I really love to be around kids because they're, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
this is the point about the treasure hunt. Have you ever met a child? You ask a little child, can you draw? Yes. Can you sing? Yes. Can, are you a good athlete? Yes. I mean, they never say no because they're so filled with life, So
All right.
that's the point about the treasure hunt. That's, I hope, what's happening here. It will tell readers of any age that there's so much possible if we just start looking and watching and being aware and finding these stories that defy all rational explanation. I mean, these are the things that light me up. I mean, yeah, they're just so much fun. I can't wait for these 15-minute episodes to start airing because
Oh, that'll be fun.
you can't watch them without going, wait a second. A fellow, I won't say his name, he's a doctor and a lawyer, and he told a story that was so mind-boggling and beautiful. And I heard the story in a pool in the summertime, and he was celebrating a big anniversary with his wife, and he's telling me the story like this, John, just yeah. And so then this, and I'm like, does your wife know this story? No. He's in his early 70s. He said the most important thing that ever happened to him, but he was
Hmm.
afraid for his credibility. And I
Uh,
just, man, I hope you'll tell this story because it's so hopeful. It's so reassuring. But there you go.
After a while, you let go of some of that stuff. I mean,
I
being
hope.
concerned about your profession in terms of what you can talk about, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Yeah. And, well, we still
John,
have,
can I make a comment about something you said just a moment ago? And that is this notion of awakening. And of course, the awakening mind does talk about it. But if you go back to the very beginning, the introduction to the course, right? It says that this is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. Now, this is the introduction to the course because it is a foundational set of thoughts, and there are multiple thoughts in that introduction, and it's so huge and so powerful. I keep going back to it over and over and over again for decades. But this idea of awakening is a choice. That's what I'm understanding, right? The curriculum is mandatory, and that curriculum course is miracles and forgiveness. That's the message of the course. The recognition is, okay, do I do that in this lifetime or not? And you have infinite time. You're an immortal being having a temporary human experience. If you don't get it this lifetime, you got the next, you got another. Hey, come back and wake up. And I'm like, no, the Course talks about, and Ken talks about this in The Vast Illusion of Time, right? Beautiful concept. That book is amazing.
Yeah.
Highly recommended. Time is the ultimate illusion. So when you say there's no time like the present, that's actually a true statement.
That's true.
Why not awaken now?
Yeah. Well, actually, if you go right down to it, you are awake now. The dream.
We just pretend we're not.
Yeah, that's it. The dream is
Yes.
that you're not awake, or that you're struggling to awaken.
Yes.
Oh.
So change the channel to fun.
Yeah, really. I love this line in the Course. I mean, it's just, I love these short little 5-4 word sentences. God knows you only now. Period.
Yeah.
God knows you only now. Nothing about your past. Forget that was a dream. Who let the dream go. All right. And there's no future, as you were just saying, to worry about.
Right. Well, the ego uses the past and the future, right? This is where sin, guilt, and fear come in.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we look into the past and we see we've made mistakes. There's your sin, right? We look into the future and we anticipate negative outcomes. And in the current moment, the ego overlays the present with guilt. And so when you play the game of time according to the ego, you can't find the present moment for happiness.
That's right. So let's have fun.
Absolutely. Merrily.
By the way, does anybody know about the origin of that song? I mean, it'll be fun to find
all I know is it was written in the 1850s, but I'm not sure what the impetus was.
Oh. Ring Around the Posy, that's from the Middle Ages. That's when we all fall down, we all die.
Oh.
That's a very, very ancient thing.
Is it Black Plague?
Well, maybe that was the same thing.
Maybe they were rowing away from the Black Peg.
I think they were just all falling down.
No, and row your boat.
All right. Well, we still have 10 minutes. Who would like to share? And you have an opportunity to jump in when you'd like to. You know what I've been emphasizing lately? Yeah, whoever said that, go.
Can you hear me if I turn off my phone?
We can hear you, Jack.
Yeah.
Well,
we can't hear you now.
I just wanted to say.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Two things. One, I don't know who invented the word retirement, but the word retirement is not really part of my lexicon. And according to Jon and obviously Allan, it's not part of your lexicon either. Hey, Allan, I just wanted to finish that piece on African Chief Thinke, because I wrote a poem in my own family world, because we had the last generation, the last person died. The African Chief Thinke said to John Adams, "We will not be going in there alone. I mean, my ancestors, I will call them into the past and beg them to help me at the judgment. I will reach back and draw them to me, and they must come. For at this moment, I am the whole reason that they have existed at all." And I got to tell you, I think that line in the movie Amistad touched you the way it touched me. Because when I heard that, I said, oh my gosh, I'm going to incorporate this into my family, because this is big time, coming from this African man from the Spanish ship. It's a great story. But I just wanted to add that since you brought up Chief Thinke, I happen to have that piece close by in my poetry folder.
Yeah, I think Jack.
Anyway.
Sorry, go ahead.
The only other thing I wanted to bring up, when we talk about laughter and fun and integrating that within awakening, I think, until we can have the lightness of laughter, the assimilation of awakening becomes richer as we have fun with it. If we were to take it too seriously, we wouldn't be able to awaken. So the laughter, I think, in the awakening process is a gift that actually acts as a catalyst to make awakening more real and happening more fully.
Yeah. What makes
Yeah, I was going to say something about Jack about that clip. You know, when I first heard it, it kind of blew me away, and then I wanted to hear it again. And you and I are definitely not the only ones that were affected by it, because if you just put in the words "call to the ancestors," it's the first thing that comes up in a Google search, and that 2.5 minutes has been watched hundreds of thousands of times. I'm one of 100,000 of those was me, but then there's many others. But it's so powerful. It's so beautiful. I cannot watch it without crying every time. You know, it's so great.
But the beauty of that movie too is they show the African tribal ancestry has so much more wisdom than, say, our Western civilized Christian world. You know, I was listening to John talking about, you know, traditional Christianity and how it's so stuck. But in the movie, you can see how this chief has a greater level of wisdom, even though he's a prisoner and he was a slave and he was captive in this ship, you know, but he still has more wisdom than Western civilized Caucasians.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the beautiful things about Dances with Wolves, again, which follows the same pattern. But the guy there was the medicine man in you know, the beautiful medicine man with the upright hair. I can't remember the name of the character, but their wisdom and their connection to beauty and nature, and there was this wonderful scene where they're talking and the grasses, it's a fall scene, the grass is flowing and you hear the wind, and they're talking about the future and how basically how their hearts can stay open with all this incursion by the white man and everything, and you can just feel the truth of what this beautiful Native American is saying and sharing, and that was deeply affecting. That movie, of course, everyone loves it. It is the same story of giving up the ego world, which is about the cavalry and the death and the fighting and all that, and coming to spirit, you know, dancing with nature. It's so beautiful when you go beyond the film and get to what does this have to do with my life?
Right. Yeah, both of them are very good examples. Yeah, thanks for being here. Your program, I want to get your book, and the fact that your book is in story form with characters and all that, it's exciting to know that you have that out there now. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Jack. I hope you read it, but I hope you also come on with a story that defies all rational explanation. You look like you have a bunch.
Thank you, Allan. Okay, I'm going to turn the microphone back over.
Okay. Now, Janet really does have her hand up, right, Janet?
Yeah, this time I'm the other me.
Yeah, you. Yeah.
I just wanted to say I read your book, thoroughly enjoyed it, and found a lot of tangents in my life. But one of the things I wanted to mention about my spiritual journey, you know, those virtual classes that, you know, all the grandkids have, and you put them on and you have this virtual journey. Well, I put them on and I was standing on the edge of the Empire State Building. I was looking down at my feet and I thought, I'm safe at home. And I stepped off. It was thrilling and scary. And I thought, that's what a spiritual journey is sometimes like.
Yeah.
Going, I'm safe at home, but I'm still hanging out in the air. So anyway, thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's a good observation.
Thank you.
Really good. Well, we got time for at least one more question or observation if anybody'd like to come on.
2 minutes.
Carol, want to come say hi?
Carol, you want to come say hi? They're asking for you.
Say goodbye?
Yeah, here she comes. She's got her glass in her hand.
Okay.
Want to say hi? The group wants to say hi to you.
Well, hi, group.
Hi, Carol.
How you doing, hon?
We've been having a lovely little visit back in the back, so we wouldn't be out here and bother you guys.
Okay, well, you weren't. Good to see you, hon. And
I love seeing over all the years, I keep seeing always the same background, which is.
well, that's probably going to stay that way. At least for a while.
John, I have a quick question of Alan.
Okay.
Alan, I'm asking you, do you have any intention of doing an audiobook of it?
Well, I thank you for asking that. Actually, yes. John Ronnie Whitson is helping me make that happen. But yeah,
Fabulous.
yes, I will, because I know a lot of people aren't reading these days and listening. Maybe not you, but my niece, for instance, doesn't read books, that she listens to audiobooks in the car and she's driving a lot. So yes,
Yeah.
we're going to make that happen. Thanks for asking about that.
Yes, thank you. I'm very happy to hear that, because I was just on Amazon looking for the book and I was noticing that there was not an audio version available. So I thought I need to ask, because I am one of those people, though I read a lot, I also listen to audiobooks a great deal.
Well, it is an ebook.
I've spent a lot of time with Jon Mundy on Living the Course in Miracles, because he recorded his book, Living the Course in Miracles. And of course, the other book that I consider my cliff notes to the Course in Miracles, Gerald Jampolsky's book on Love is Letting Go of Fear. So I think that there's a way of, there's nothing like repetition, and just orally hearing a story and saying, oh, and just like anything else, when you read a book, you read it again, you say, gee, have I read this before? I don't remember having heard that the first time that I read through it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Taking it deeper.
Yeah, deeper and deeper.
The Course in Miracles is a new book every time I open it.
Oh my
Mhm.
God.
We never step in the same water twice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We're at pretty much the end of our time. Thanks so much, Alan, for being here. We'd like to close with Janet, would you read the Lord's Prayer from the Course if I put it on screen? I'm seeing how you're there.
I'd be happy to read it.
Okay.
The Lord's Prayer from A Course in Miracles. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? Sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given, and accept but this into the minds which you created and which you love. Amen.
Amen. Going to gallery view to say goodbye to each other if we can. Yeah.